finally releases some specifics on his controversial immigration plan, but he's going to run into a problem or two with the Constitution. Joining me now is Charles Hurt, Washington Times columnist, Maria Cardona, Democratic strategist, and Philip Bump, political reporter for the Washington Post. Good to have all of you on this evening. Charles, you're the unlucky one. I'm going to start with you first. Trump has a plan on immigration. Here's what he says. He wants Mexico to pay for the border wall. He wants to deport all 11 million illegal immigrants, and he wants to end birthright citizenship. According to some reports, it would cost anywhere from 100 to 200 billion with a B dollars to do it. Is it even possible?
And according to Trump, he's going to send a bill to Mexico. I don't know if all that's possible or doable, but the part of it that I think is actually pretty interesting is the idea that if you make Mexico, if you punish Mexico for the problem of the illegal immigration coming across our border, suddenly the illegal immigration coming from the south is going to stop. And one thing that often doesn't get talked about in the debate here is that Mexico itself, they don't let illegals stop in their country when they're coming northward, but they let them come through if they're going on to America. And so it's a very shrewd tactic on the part of Trump, whether he's able to get it through and whether it's something that he can get Congress to go along with, things like that. That's a debatable question. But at least it's a shrewd tactic, and he's thinking differently than any of the other politicians have about a problem that has bedeviled them for literally 3 decades now.
Okay, so then by a show of hands, all right, does anyone think that this plan can work? Anyone, raise your hands if you think it can work. So do you think it can work, Charles? Okay.
I do.
All right.
I think it's an idea, and it's a lot of very sophisticated ideas about addressing a problem that politicians simply haven't been able to address.
Philip, why do you sit there with your hand in your lap?
Yeah, Philip.
It's quite comfortable, but I mean, calling it a sophisticated idea is giving it far more than it deserves. I mean, Donald Trump, most of his immigration policy has sort of been backfilled as he's been trying to explain why he made the claims he was making. If you look at some of the stats he put into his document today, it simply is just, he's already been out there. He's already said, let's build the wall. He's already said, let's make Mexico pay for it. Now he's trying to figure out how he's going to actually make that into something that's real. I mean, the idea that he will get Mexico to pay for this, especially because so many of the immigrants that cross the border aren't from Mexico to the point that was just made, and it is not Mexico's fault even. It just makes no sense.
Okay, Maria, I think you agree with him, right? So can I ask you another important question about his immigration plan, Maria, and move on? Because I don't think you agree that it works. Okay, so listen, he links immigration and jobs right off the bat, and here's what he says. He said, the effects on job seekers have also been disastrous, and black Americans have been particularly harmed. The influx of foreign workers holds down salaries, keeps unemployment high, and makes it difficult for poor and working class Americans, including immigrants themselves and their children, to earn a middle class wage. So Maria, is there any truth to what Trump is saying? Does illegal immigration affect American jobs and wages, particularly for minorities?
I'm so glad you brought that up, Don, because that is one of the biggest myths that Mr. Trump puts forth in this ridiculous, xenophobic, unworkable proposal. And that is that undocumented immigrants take away the jobs that native-born workers want to do, and that they keep down the wages, when in fact completely the opposite is true. When we had the largest wave of undocumented immigrants coming into this country under Bill Clinton's administration, we had the largest expansion of economic growth that we've ever had. And in fact, another huge myth that Donald Trump puts forth is that illegal immigration or the undocumented population coming over from Mexico is at record levels, when in fact nothing could be further from the truth. In the last several years, immigration into this country, undocumented immigration into this country, was either zero or net negative. What Donald Trump is doing is putting forth ideas that frankly came from Ann Coulter's book, which again underscored the xenophobic nature of all of the voters, frankly, who are supporting him right now. So I do think his plan works to do 2 things, Don. To perhaps get him the Republican nomination, which is freaking out establishment Republicans, and then in the general election to help put a Democrat in the White House.
Okay, it looks like, Charles, are you about to jump out of your seat because you're sitting?
I just don't know how you can make the argument that if you paid higher wage, if you didn't have the illegals here working for dirt cheap, and you paid a livable wage for those jobs, I don't know how you can possibly say that Americans wouldn't absolutely do those jobs. But the whole reason that you've had had this union by the left-wing Democrats who are looking for new voters into this country because they can't get Americans to go along with their plans, and you have a union between them and wealthy Republicans. Is because Republicans want their yard done for cheap. They want their nanny work done for cheap, and this has been driving the whole. This is why we've never actually fixed this problem. And
Charles, you're getting close to who's going to clean their toilet comment there. I mean,
well, I think it's true. I think that's absolutely why
recently, Charles, we had a very good chance to actually fix this immigration problem in the most sensible way, which
by
most
giving
Americans
amnesty.
Agreed with. No, not amnesty. It's called comprehensive immigration reform. And the reason why it didn't pass is because, again, the xenophobic wing of the Republican Party kept it from going to a vote in the House. It would have passed. It passed the Republican Senate, thanks to Senator Lindsey Graham and Senator Marco Rubio, who, by the way, has done a 180 and has completely turned his back on it because he knows he can't get to the nomination
by all means, jump in, because if you wait on me to call you, you're never going to get in.
I just wanted to point out the difference here between anecdote and large data. Donald Trump relies heavily on anecdotes. Certainly there have been cases in which someone has gotten a job that could have gone to an American worker, in the same way that there have been cases in which an illegal immigrant has committed a horrible crime. That has absolutely happened. The data, however, it doesn't necessarily paint the port that he's suggesting.
That's right.
The unemployment figures he lists in his document are inflated over the July numbers that you can look up at the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Donald Trump, again, he planted his flag and then had to figure out what the flag looked like. And so what he's done today is he's saying, okay, well, this is why I think all these things, but really what he's trying to do is he's trying to backfill policy solutions to the problem that he's already addressed.
I want to move on. We also heard Donald Trump say he watches the Sunday shows to get military advice. Jeb Bush is now hitting back. Take a listen.
I get my military advice from a really dedicated group of young policy men and women that are serving in the campaign. Whether it's this veterans proposal John Noonan led the charge on, or tax reform, which will be in September, or immigration reform, which I wrote a book on, but we've enhanced that, or coming up, regulatory reform. This is driven by really smart, young, committed conservatives. And what I do is to give them the broadest possible access to the broadest number of people. So, I'm not going to fall into the trap of having, I watch Meet the Press and I get my foreign policy advice from that. I think it needs to be a little more organized than that.
All right. So you first, Charles. Trump gets his military advice from TV. Jeb from young folks in his campaign.
Was Jeb taking a shot at someone there? Did you see the people sitting behind? The people sitting behind him looked like they were about to fall asleep. That's the problem with Jeb Bush. People, he has an exclamation behind his name because he's trying to get people excited about his name. The guy is putting people to sleep there.
I completely agree with Charles on this. And in fact, I don't think Jeb Bush is the right person to make this argument against Donald Trump. It's helping Donald Trump, especially because Jeb Bush has done so spectacularly terrible.
Philip?
Yeah, I mean, last week he said he was being advised by Paul Wolfowitz as well. I mean, Jeb Bush's track record on where he's getting advice from is not the sort of thing that's going to endear him to a general election public either.
Whose side are you on here? You said you guys are on no one's side. Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Philip. I'll have you all back. You were great. I appreciate it. Up next, Montel Williams. He has strong opinions about Donald Trump, and he's pointing fingers at the media. Oh, my gosh. He's here in New York on the set. This is going to be